Hello! From this medieval Spanish castle located in south of Iberian Peninsula near Granada, I will tell you the complete medieval history of Spain. I will address the Reconquista, the struggle between Christians and Muslims through centuries, started in 8th century when the first Muslim wave crossed the Gibraltar rock, and it will end in 15th century when Granada will fall under the Castilian power. This is Ziemowit about history, and this is movie about the medieval history of Spain. The Reconquista is often idealized by historians, mainly Christian historians, as a struggle between Christians and Muslims, like a struggle between good and the evil. But it wasn't such a black and white at all. These centuries of struggle on the Iberian Peninsula were often very complicated. Very often Christians were allied with other Muslims to fight other Muslims, and sometimes Christian kings even ally Muslims to fight other Christian kings. Christian rulers in the north of Iberian Peninsula were fighting among themselves for centuries. I think the level of bloodiness in the wars between Christian kingdoms in Spain and between Muslims and Christians was total equal, and sometimes even Christian allied with Muslim leaders to fight other Christians. So this is very complicated history which I'm going to tell you today from this beautiful medieval castle in Tabernas in southern Spain. The beginning of Muslim conquest of the Iberian Peninsula in fact started much earlier, when the Umayyad Caliphate was trying to expand Islam all over the world. And as a part of this expansion, they tried to conquer present Tunisia with the great city of Carthage. Carthage was a province of Byzantine Empire, but as the empire was very weak in the beginning of 8th century, Carthage was not very powerful, and after a long siege, Muslims took the city, but they initiated an uprising because people living in Tunisia were not eager to submit to new conquerors, so they united under the rule of a red-haired princess called Dalia, or Al-Kahina in Arabic, and she was probably of Vandal origin because of her red hair, and she united remaining Vandals, remaining Byzantines, and also Berber tribes living there. And with this force she was able to repel the Muslim invasion, but the second wave of their second attempt to conquer Tunisia in 702 was successful, and they won battle against Dalia, killed her, and then Tunisia fell under Muslim occupation, and this country stays Muslim up to date. And after conquering this territory, they moved forward, they moved west to the western coast of Africa, and from there Tariq ibn Ziyad, a general, not very important, just a small general of Arab forces, took Berbers and took Arab cavalry, and he passed Gibraltar, and in year 711 he landed north of Gibraltar on the Spanish territory. But the Spanish Visigoth kingdom was very divided at this time, so he surprisingly easily won battle with King Rodrigo, and the king was slain in the consequence of the battle. So, governor of Africa Musa saw that Spain is very weak and it's very rich territory, so he sent more troops, and in following years all Spain was conquered by the Muslims except one little piece in the northwest, hidden beyond the reach of Cantabrian mountains. This small piece of land was Asturia. Asturia was refuge for all Christians who flee from Muslim occupation, and Pelagrio was their leader. He was probably Visigothic aristocrat who united people around him and started his resistance against Muslims. But Muslims were not so eager to conquer this hostile, hilly, mountainous territory, so they attacked France. But in France, a Muslim general, Munuza, in year 721 was defeated by Frankish governor, and as he was going back to Cordoba, he wanted to score some victory because he don't want to come back with only defeat. So he went to Asturia and he wanted to crush Pelagius and gain victory, easy victory here. But he was very surprised because in canyon called Cavadonga he was utterly defeated and killed by Asturians. So they were able to maintain their independence and gain some strength, and now they were independent and willing to expand their territory in Iberian Peninsula, but this territory will grow very slowly. In the first 200 years they will gain only a little bit of territory. Fortunately for the Christians who survived in the north, Caliph Yazid II ruled only 4 years and died in 724. Which caused the huge empire to be torn apart by civil wars, especially since the Caliph introduced significant financial burdens on the conquered non-Arabic population. They rebelled because first, when Arabs began their rule, they promised something completely different to their new subject. They said, "Accept Islam and we will all be equal as brothers before Allah." It turned out that this was just a political propaganda, and now, for example, the entire North Africa rebelled against the authorities in Damascus. In 730, the situation was now somehow under control, and Al-Andalus was taken over by a new governor. He energetically started to restore order on the Iberian Peninsula, so that he could now make another great conquest in the name of Allah. Little Asturia was not very important for Muslims from Cordoba. The most important was France. France was big Christian kingdom, and Umayyad Caliph from Damascus sent orders to conquer this territory. And also he sent some troops to reinforce the Umayyads in Al-Andalus, and as the order was, and at year 732 great Muslim army crossed Pyrenees and marched north to conquer Francia. But Franks had great leader Charles de Martel, and he met Muslim army under Poitiers and gave them decisive defeat. He had smaller forces, but great Frankish cavalry and great Frankish infantry was superior to Muslims at this time. And now he became a very important leader of Franks, and he will start the Carolingian dynasty, and Charles the Great, Charles the Magne, will be the next ruler after him, and will create Frankish Empire as we know it. After this defeat, young Islam Empire, the Umayyad Caliphate, suffered some more defeats on the various fronts. For example, they crossed Caucasus Mountains in 737 to crush Khazar Khaganate there. Even they won a decisive battle in the steppe, but then they pushed north, but the success was very limited because as they withdrew back south to Caucasus Mountains, Khazars became Jewish as they wanted to, and they ignored Islam at all. So this export of Islam north to Caucasus was not successful. Also, they tried to invade Anatolia. Of course, they tried to conquer Constantinople, but they all failed. And in 740, under Arconion, they were crushed by Byzantine forces on the land. And this was the beginning of the end of Umayyad Caliphate, because they were struggling inside. They were fighting for leadership, and finally in 750 Umayyad Caliphate collapsed, and other dynasty, the Abbasids, will replace them. But this will be very good situation for Asturia, because Muslims fighting among themselves is very good news for Christian hiding in these Cantabrian mountains. But this will not last forever, because in 755 Abd al-Rahman, the member of Umayyad family, will escape from Damascus and will land in Spain and want to retake power in Al-Andalus, or secure power for his family. And he gets a big credit from people living there, but Al-Fahir, ruler of Al-Andalus in this time, was not so eager to subdue to him, but after his loss in north fighting with Basques, he was weakened, and then he lost a big battle against Abd al-Rahman, and finally he established Umayyad rule over Al-Andalus, and this rule will last until 11th century. This will be very important 3 centuries when Al-Andalus will grow both militarily, economically, and culturally, and this will be the most one of the most important states in the world in this time. After the collapse of the great Umayyad Caliphate, Christians in the north have few decades of relief, and then the king of Asturias, Fuela the Cruel, who ruled in 757 to 768, was a very brave man. Whenever he had relative peace in the south and did not have to fight the Moors in given year, he attacked the Basques and subjugated territories in the east. But later, fearing for his power, he ordered to murder his brother, which in turn caused a great rebellion of nobility and the death of Fuela the Cruel. Internal unrest lasted for several years until the ruling dynasty, descending from Pelagrius, who defeated the Muslims in the famous Battle of Covadonga in 722, expires. In 774, a new ruler, Silo, takes over Asturias, and the political circumstances are very favorable for him because the Moors have a real problem in the north, where Charles the Magn began his reign. Taking advantage of the fact that the Moors and the Franks are fighting for domination of the southern slopes of the Pyrenees, Silo attacked west and subjugates Galicia. In the 8th century, fighting south of Cantabrian mountains was so frequent that the area became known as the wasteland of Duero, because the population of this area was so great. Only in 9th century, when Asturias strengthened its position, would it begin to repopulate the region, building castles similar to this one I'm currently in. As you can see, I have changed my location a little bit. Now I'm in different Almoravid castle from medieval Spain. I'm 100 kilometers north, but the weather is beautiful. I'm 1,200 meters above sea level. I can see sea in the distance in the east, and here is very warm. It's 25 degrees in the middle of winter, so I'm very glad to be here and to tell you further about the history of medieval Spain. In year 778, Charles the Great wanted to conquer northern Spain because Suleiman, the emir of this region, wanted to become a vassal of Charles the Great, and he was opposed to Abd al-Rahman, the Caliph of Cordoba and all Al-Andalus. So Charles sees this as a great opportunity to expand his territories south and maybe to reconquer whole Iberian Peninsula in future. So he marched through Pyrenees with great army, and he spot Suleiman under Saragossa. But being here in Spain, Charles realized that the situation is not so colorful as Suleiman described it. First of all, Al-Rahman's forces were strong in the region, and Suleiman wasn't so eager to subdue to Charles the Great. And what's more, great Abd al-Rahman's army was marching north to retake this territory. So Charles made a tactical withdrawal, but to be not so defeated, he went to Baskonia, and there he raised the city walls of the capital of Basque people. And when he was going back to France in Pyrenees mountains, he was ambushed in the canyon Roncevaux. And in this canyon took place the famous battle between the rear guard of Charles' forces and Roland, the great Caroling knight who was fighting bravely against Basques and who died there. And the Song of Roland is the most famous early medieval knight song. After fleeing north, Abd al-Rahman conquered these territories as far as Pyrenees to the north, and he wanted also to conquer Asturias, but he died. But it wasn't very lucky change for Asturians, because Al-Hashim, the next emir of Al-Andalus, was also very eager warrior. He was very modest, reading Quran a lot, and he loved jihad. So he made some expedition north. First he invaded France, and under the beautiful castle Carcassonne he defeated Frankish army, but he don't wanted to conquer this territory. He just looted a lot. He took a lot of slaves and took them south. He sold them, and he built great mosque in Cordoba. Then he attacked Asturias, and he conquered the capital of this kingdom, Oviedo, and razed this city to the ground. So Alfonso II was very afraid about his future, and the situation looked like Asturias will be conquered once and for all. But Al-Hashim died soon after this expedition, and Alfonso gathered his soldiers, his knights, and moved on the campaign south to conquer Lisbon, and he managed to sack this wealthy coastal city. Wealthy because the trade on the West Atlantic coast was all the time very important. There to Lisbon came a lot of ships from the north, mainly Anglo-Saxon or Norman ships, carrying slaves, mostly Slavic slaves, but not only. Wherever Vikings conquer some land and capture some people, they were selling them south to Al-Andalus, and Lisbon was the nearest big port for this trade, and they bought here very precious metals, precious jewelry, and also silk later on, because in 11th century silk will be produced in Al-Andalus, and it will be very important trading cargo for these ships, but we will speak about it later. King of Asturias has a lot of luck, because Al-Hakim, another emir of Cordoba, will struggle with inner opposition for the next 26 years. So it will give free hand for Asturias to push south and conquer step by step, valley by valley, some territories to the south. And also Alfonso had one great miracle. In year 814 he found the grave of Santiago, Saint Jacob, one of the 12 disciples of Jesus. The Christian legend says that Santiago was the one who traveled all the way west from Israel to Spain, and there he preached early Christianity. He tried to convert some local people, and on his way he moved as far as northern western Iberian Peninsula to Compostela. And today we have Santiago de Compostela, the place with believed to be grave of Santiago. Immediately pilgrimage started to this place, and Alfonso gained wealth because of pilgrims, and also some moral power to fight stronger against the Muslims. And he did it successfully, because in year 825 he crushed Saracen forces near Naron, and this was very important victory because it proved that Asturias is now a strong kingdom, able to stand the much stronger south neighbor Al-Andalus. Also, 1 year later, Basques become independent, and Inigo Arista became the first king of Navarre, and Navarre will be another very important political component of this struggle, of this Reconquista of Iberian Peninsula. But if this is too easy for you, now we have another ingredient to this mixture: Vikings. Vikings came to loot the Iberian Peninsula. They first landed near Coruña in Asturias in year 845, but Ramiro I, king of Asturias, crushed them. They lost a lot of ships and people, but Bjorn, the Ironside, doesn't want to withdraw. He went farther south and he plundered Sevilla. So he was very brave, but Muslims were totally surprised by this sudden attack of Vikings. They probably never seen them before. Then tried to swim by Wadi al-Kabir to conquer even Cordoba, but on their way they were crushed by Muslims, and the remaining of this great Viking fleet went back home. But imagine, when they came back to Norway, to Denmark, they were talking about enormous wealth. They were talking about great cities full of gold, full of silver, easy to plunder. And 15 years later, another great Viking fleet will come to Iberian Peninsula. But being more wise after this first attack, now they left Asturias alone and focused on southern parts of Al-Andalus, and even northern African cities were pillaged by this Viking raid. Vikings first conquered the cities on the Atlantic shore, on the African Atlantic shore, then swim through the Gibraltar Strip, and then they sack cities on the northern part of Africa. And on the end of the journey, they also plundered region around Cordoba. And they were so fast, Emir of Al-Andalus was not able to gather strong forces to crush them. So they went back to Norway with full boats of gold, silver, and precious materials. So they were very, very happy from this journey. And during this Viking raid on the south, Ordoño I, king of Asturias, joined with Kingdom of Navarra and conquered Banu Qasim, this region in northern eastern Spain, and he made this region to be his vassal. So it was a very big step forward on the way to reconquer the Iberian Peninsula. Alfonso III has this luck to be a ruling king for 44 years, and he was called Emperor de España. He conquered territories south to the river Duero, and he started to fortify this border region. So in future, this region will be called Castilla, the land with a lot of castles. But after his death in 910, this kingdom of Asturias disappears, and it's split among his three sons, Garcia, Ordoño, and Fuela. But Garcia died soon after his father, and Ordoño from Galicia managed to unite these three parts again. But now the city of León will be the most important, and now this kingdom will be called Kingdom of León. So we have Kingdom of León since Ordoño II, but in the south we have Abd al-Rahman III, the biggest ruler of early medieval Al-Andalus, and he will reach the title of Caliph in the year 929. Caliph meaning the ruler of all faithful Muslims. But in this time there was not only one Caliph in Cordoba, there were also Caliph in Egypt, Fatimid Caliphate, and in Iraq, in Syria, the Abbasid Caliphate. So, of course, Abd al-Rahman III was thinking that he is the one true Caliph because he was from Umayyad family. The first big Arab Caliphate was formed by Umayyads. So he was fighting with Fatimid Caliphate in Africa, and this was his focus. It was very lucky for the northern kingdoms because Rahman was not considering them as real enemies. For him, Fatimids and North Africa was the most important place to expand his rule. So after defeating Ordoño II, King of Leon, in 920, he gave them some peace, but then Ramiro II, new king of the Leon, made a bold campaign south in 932. He conquered, he captured Madrid and then marched forward to take Toledo. Toledo, which was very important city because it was Visigothic capital of former United España. So he wanted to take this capital and, of course, re-establish old big Visigothic kingdom. He was unable to conquer Toledo in this year, and 7 years later, Abd al-Rahman went north to crush the kingdom of Leon, but he was repelled. Ramiro II was able to win great battle against Abd al-Rahman III, and this great caliph barely managed to escape with his life from this battle. So it was very important victory for Christians, and after this battle Ramiro made peace with Rahman, and Rahman focused on his southern affairs, and Ramiro focused on his northern kingdom. But after his death, his kingdom of Leon will be divided, will be in a half century in internal struggle between his sons and grandsons. There will be a king called Ordoño IV, the wicked man, and also Sancho I, the fat. So as you can see, these kings has no much esteem after 1000 years. But in this place, I would like you to tell something about the situation, the economic situation in Al-Andalus. Imagine that people in Al-Andalus, normal, ordinary workers, earned like 100 grams of gold per year. Comparing to prices today, this is nice sum, but take in mind that 100 grams of gold per year was almost without any taxation. The taxes in Al-Andalus were very low, so almost all this money remained in the pocket of the worker. We have very precise data about the economic situation of 10th century Al-Andalus. They were on a very high level of administration and they collected a lot of data. And as we know, Caliph of Cordoba was collecting in taxes enormous sum of 75 tons of gold yearly. Of course, not everything was collected in gold. Some of these taxes were collected in silver, but comparing it to gold, it was like 75 tons of pure gold. To put it in a perspective, look on medieval France, also very important, very rich Christian kingdom, which collected yearly around 10 tons of gold. And to put it in another perspective, Poland during the reign of Casimir the Great was collecting in taxes something like 1 ton of gold. So Al-Andalus was extraordinarily rich. It was one of the richest countries in the world on this time, and the trade was their power. They also bought a lot of slaves from the north. They liked very much Slavic slaves. Slavs were used in agriculture and also they were used in army. Caliph had his own elite Slavic guard, which was very loyal to him and were not connected with any other Islamic lord. So it was very important for him to have this elite Slavic guard. And also beautiful Slavic women were bought to make pleasure to Muslims from the higher sphere. They were trading them in Prague, they were trading them in Volyn, and also Constantinople and ports on the south of Crimean Peninsula were the places where mainly Jewish traders were buying slaves. And in the second part of the 10th century, as I told you before, northern kingdom of Leon will be divided and focused on internal struggle, but Caliphate of Cordoba will be still very strong, but not Caliph will be strong, but his Vizier Almanzor will be the one who will be the man that will spread fear among all Christians on the Iberian Peninsula. Almanzor, originally Abu Amir, as a young man from a wealthy family, he was sent to Cordoba to study, and there he quickly advanced in the administrative hierarchy of the Caliphate as an extremely intelligent and able man. Despite his very young age, he quickly found himself close to the most powerful people in Cordoba. In 976, when Caliph al-Hakam II died, Abu Amir was the one who contributed greatly to secure throne for his 8-year-old son Hashim II. It was the first time in history of Al-Andalus that an underage boy took over power after his father's death. And since the stake was power over one of the most important countries in the world, there were conspiracies and bloodshed involved. The party of the little Caliph, Hashim II, entrusted the command of the army to the talented Abu Amir, and for the next 5 years he destroyed all political opponents of Hashim II, and in year 981 he took the title of Almanzur ibn Allah, meaning victor by the grace of the God. Now he focused on tormenting Christians in the north, and he did it extremely effectively. During the next 21 years of his rule as Hajib or Vizier, he carried out 57 victorious military expeditions. He mainly invaded the Kingdom of Leon, but for example in 985 he also captured Barcelona. To somehow protect Navarre, Sancho II gave him his daughter as wife. In 997, Almanzor even sacked Santiago de Compostela, an extremely important pilgrimage site for Christians. The Moors took all the wealth of the sanctuary, even the church's bells. After this event, the rulers of northern Spain were completely terrified. They stopped all quarrels among themselves and united against the powerful Vizier. However, they did not manage to defeat him because Almanzor died in 1002. In the beginning of 11th century, King of Navarre, Sancho III, is coming to power, and during his 35 years of reign, he will unite almost all northern Spain under his rule, and when he died in 1035, his kingdom will be divided and it will be the beginning of Kingdom of Aragon in the east, and Leon and Castilla will be finally united under Ferdinand the Great in the west. So this will be very important change on the political map of Iberian Peninsula. But more important will be the end of Umayyad Caliphate in the year 1031. After the death of the last caliph, no one was able to hold this territory again. There was no such a skilled and talented leader as Abd al-Rahman III, for example. So this Umayyad Caliphate will be now divided into small Muslim states called taifas. And these taifas will fight now against Christians, will fight amongst themselves, and this will be very good situation for northern Christian kingdoms, because now the Reconquista will be much easier.
And this is the end of the first part of medieval history of Spain. I invite you right now to subscribe to my channel and to wait a little bit for the second part of this amazing history.